Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Faithwalk 101. We are so glad that you could join us. In this lesson, we're talking about who is our neighbor? Who is our neighbor according to God? You know, today we live in a world that is so transit. People are so private. People are so much into themselves. Do we really know who our neighbors are? Do we really know each other at all? Do we really even try to know who our neighbors are? We're living in a world today where it's really hard to get to know people. A lot of people, as they get off from work, they go in, they never come out. And sometimes that's all we see is them coming and going, and we have very little conversation with them. But if you're not one of those people where you know who your neighbors are and you try to get to know the people around you and just engage in life, because life is happening to everyone. But in this lesson, we want to look at who is really our neighbor and do we really want to know them? So who is our neighbor according to God? How God defines neighbor, in many ways, to us it might seem odd. You see, a neighbor to God is anyone that we encounter where we can show love. That's right. A neighbor is anyone when we encounter where we can show God's love working through us. This is the love from above. Yes, there are people who are evil and mean, who practice hatred and love. They love to be seen with their hateful behavior. But to that, God says vengeance is his. God says vengeance is mine. To those who decline and redefine neighbor with a replacement of this hate sign, ignoring that God defines true neighbor with love that is divine, God says vengeance is mine, my friend. You see, there are people that live today. They're experts in the law. That's right, they're experts. They know how to redefine neighbor, and they want to redefine it by what they say. But Jesus says, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. This is the greatest commandment. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. What is the second one? Love thy neighbor as thyself. So, but when man wants to justify himself, then he says, who is my neighbor? But God says, a neighbor is anyone that we encounter where we can show love. It's God working through us. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor and where did he go? Did he disappear? What happened to my neighbor? Oh, my friends, how did friendship turn into this pretend Hollywood acting show? Because sometimes that's what it seems like. Neighbor is a word that some people used to know and some people never have known. But now it's been replaced with this internet friends that is always on the go. Yeah, we got a lot of internet friends, right? Do we really know them? Do we really know these strangers that we're saying are friends? Because you know what? We can hide behind a screen and pretend that we're someone that we're not. But you know, in the Bible, when in Hebrews chapter 10 and 25, it says, not forsaking the assembly as such as some of them were. We are called to come together in person, my friends, to interact, to encourage, to love one another, this personal interaction. And you know what I've found sometimes in the church? We have a hard time interacting with one another. But if we can't love each other, if we can't fellowship with each other, if we can't look at each other as a neighbor, then how can we reach a lost and dying world? We have a hard time rubbing shoulders with one another because we want everyone to agree with everything we do and everything we say. Now, friends, he says, who is our neighbor? Well, our neighbor is anyone that we encounter where we can show God's love, his love working through us from above. The neighbor is a word that some people used to use, but now it's been replaced with internet friends that's always on the go. But Jesus tells us who a neighbor is, and this is not a humanity quiz. No, my friends, he tells us who our neighbor is. Your neighbor is anyone who is in need, regardless of their background. It is their soul that we feed. But that's not the case today, is it? If you don't agree with me, if you don't go along with what I say, then you can't be my neighbor. A neighbor is anyone, regardless of their background, that we can show love to them, because it is their soul that we want to feed. But you know, people have taken on themselves to pick and choose. But Jesus says, you know, vengeance is mine. Vengeance and grudges is not what we use today. And I think that's why it's so hard for us when we come into the church, because we have all these different backgrounds. But what makes us one is our Lord Jesus Christ. He makes us one. And it is his love that we're able to show to one another, where we can look at each other and say, hey, you're my neighbor. But who is my neighbor? Anyone that we can show compassion and God's love to. It does not have to be someone that we agree with about everything. Yes, there are mean and evil people in this world, but our Lord Jesus Christ says, vengeance is mine. Vengeance and grudges, it's not what we use, my friends. If you do, in the end, you will lose. Who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Your neighbor is anyone that you encounter where you can show love. It is God working through us from above. Isn't that so wonderful, my friends? You know what's lacking in this world? Love. You know what people want so much more than anything else is love and friends. And we're isolated ourselves, because that's what the enemy wants to do. He wants us to isolate ourselves. The experts of the law, they want to redefine neighbor to mean what they say. But Jesus says, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. You know, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 13, I've said this over and over and over again, there'll be three things that remains in the end: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is what? Love. You got it, my friends. Love. People want to be loved. Continue to join us on Faithwalk 101 as we talk more about these things. Thank you, my friends.